Have you ever thought that maybe the Bible isn't just, a history book? What if it's actually a blueprint, a guide for this incredible transformation that happens inside of you? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today, this really unique way of seeing the Bible, not as some ancient history, but as your own personal, internal story.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll start with this central paradox that's kind of mind-bending. Then we'll find the key to unlocking it. After that, we'll see how the whole story shifts from being about them to being about you. We'll look at the model for how that change happens, and then we'll wrap up by looking at the ultimate goal of this whole internal journey.
All right, let's get into it. Our journey here really starts with this fascinating puzzle, something that's right at the very heart of this way of thinking.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That sounds like a total contradiction, right? I mean, how can something be both? On the surface, it just seems impossible. But according to this framework we're looking at, getting your head around this idea, that's the absolute first crucial step.
Yeah, it's the obvious question to ask. And the answer is what really changes everything. It reframes how you read the entire book. See, it's not a contradiction at all. It's just two different things happening at the same time. Okay, so this really lays it out. On one side, you have the Bible as complete. Think of the very beginning of Genesis as the finished divine blueprint. The architectural plans are done, sealed, perfect. But then on the other side, it's incomplete. Why? Because everything that comes after that is the story, the history of that plan actually being built, unfolding in real time through people and, here's the key part, ultimately inside of you. So the design is finished, but the construction, that's still going on.
Okay, so if the story is still unfolding, where's the construction site? Where is all this happening? Well, this way of looking at things says it's not out there in the world, it's happening right inside of us.
So yeah, the Bible's main theme is obviously Christ. But the argument here is that the really crucial part, the big revelation, happens inside you, the individual. So while the Gospels tell us about a historical person, the ultimate goal, in this view, is for that same story of Christ to be revealed personally, inside each believer. The history on the page is like the spark that starts the internal fire. So you might be wondering, okay, how does this actually happen? What's the mechanism? Well, what's really cool is how this framework explains it using two Greek terms, rhema and pneuma. So rhema is the spoken, living word, the word that brings a sudden revelation, and pneuma, well, that's the Spirit. The source points to John 6:63, which connects these two, saying Christ's words are spirit and life. So the idea is, when that rhema and pneuma come together inside of you, boom, that's when you get that internal understanding that turns the Bible from just a book into a living, personal reality. All right, so if the whole point is for the Bible to become your internal story, how does the book itself actually get you there? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The source points out this amazing progression, a shift in the point of view as you read through it. Just look at this flow here. It's a journey. You start with the Old Testament, which is mostly in the third person, right? It's a story about them. Abraham, Moses, David, the nation of Israel. Then you get to the Gospels, and suddenly the perspective shifts. Jesus shows up and starts speaking directly to you, the listener, the crowd, the disciple. And then, the final step, you get to the epistles, and the perspective becomes first person. The writers, especially Paul, are talking about what's happening inside of them, using the word I.
And this verse from Galatians, this is like the grand finale of that shift. It's the ultimate example. It's not about them anymore. It's not even just a message to you. It has become a personal first-person testimony. I have been crucified. Christ lives in me. Do you see that? The story has literally moved off the page and into the person.
So, what's the big takeaway here? The whole point of this journey through the text is to lead you to this personal synthesis. It's not enough to just believe in the gospel of Christ over there. The goal is for that gospel to merge with your life, to become what the Apostle Paul even called my gospel. Okay, so how does this transformation from you to I actually happen? What's the operating model for this huge internal change? Well, the source material points us to this incredibly powerful parallel in the Bible, the tale of the two Adams. This breakdown from 1 Corinthians 15 really lays it all out. So on one side, you've got the first Adam. That's our shared human origin story. He's described as a living being made from the dust of the earth. He basically represents our natural, physical, mortal state. But then, on the other side, you have the last Adam, who is Christ. And he's not just a living being, he's a life-giving spirit who comes from heaven. He represents a totally new spiritual reality.
And the consequences of which Adam you identify with, well, they're huge. It's pretty clear in Adam everyone dies. That's our default setting, right? We bear the image of the man of dust. But in Christ, everyone is made alive. So this whole journey of faith, from this perspective, is about making that transition, moving from bearing the image of the man of dust to bearing the image of the man of heaven. And it has to be a fundamental change, because as it says, our natural flesh and blood state just can't inherit this new spiritual kingdom. So this brings us to our final piece of the puzzle. What's the end goal? What is the ultimate outcome? After this whole internal journey, what do you become? Well, there's a specific biblical term for this new identity.
And that term is first fruits. Think about it. Christ is presented as the very first fruit of the resurrection, the first one to ever embody this new kind of spiritual life. So by going on this internal journey, believers become part of that exact same harvest. It's like James 1:18 says, "They are brought forth by the word of truth to be," and I quote, "a kind of first fruits of all he created."
And there's a really neat but super important distinction this framework makes between two different ideas of the end. In Greek, you have eschatos, which is kind of like the final consequence, the ultimate end. Think of it as the chaff, the stuff that gets thrown away after the harvest. But then you have telos, and telos isn't just an end, it's the intended goal, the fulfillment, the purpose, it's the grain itself. So a believer's destiny isn't just to end, it's to be fulfilled. So when you put all of this together, from that initial paradox all the way to this personal revelation, what do you get? You get a completely new identity. You're part of a new creation. You have a new purpose and even a new home.
And I think this verse from Philippians just says it all perfectly. The transformation is so total that your real identity, your citizenship, isn't even here on earth anymore. It's rooted in a completely different spiritual reality.
And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. If this view is right, if the Bible is really the blueprint for an internal story, what does the final chapter of your story look like right now as it's being written?